So the other side of the coin for file operation apparently is reading data from file. You will use a file class to open up a file, to open the file, and then you will use the scanner class to read data from a file. So you can see how we create a new file object just by passing the file name to it. Then you will actually the file path to it. Then we will generate an object representing the file. And you use a variable to contain the reference to this file object. We will use the same scanner class that we used for keyboard input. It's basically the same input mechanism, but here we are going to create the new scanner object by using the file object instead of the system in, the standard input device. The standard input device system.in is also an object that you initialize your scanner class for. But here, we just use the my file object instead of the system.in object. So we will do a scanner keyboard equals to new scanner system.in. See, this is the way you use system.in to create the keyboard scanner. Then here, you use the file object to create the file input scanner. It will create the instance of a scanner class. Then the rest is getting the file name. This is standard usage. And create the instance of a file class to represent the file. Then create the instance of a scanner class that read from the file. So here we have two scanners, scanner object, just that one is pointing to system input, which is keyboard, and another pointing to the file. And remember this here, the keyboard is just a variable name. You can call it standard in, you can call it the my input or whatever my input device. It's just a variable name, but this variable, you can change the name, but it's pointing to the scanner object that associated with a system input device, which is represented in Java by system.in object. Once an instance of scanner is created, data can be read. Use the same methods you have been using to read keyboard input, because this is the same scanner object, same class. They have the same, they have the same method. Next line, next int, next double. And the scanner class will also throw an in-out exception if a file, when the file object is passed to its constructor, if the file doesn't exist, apparently you cannot read from it, right? Then that's an IO exception. That's just one example of how IO exception can be thrown. So we will put a throw in IO exception clause in the header of the method that instantiate the scanner class. In our case, it will just be main method. Now, the scanner class's hasNext method will return true if another item can be read from the file. What does that mean? So when you create a scanner and when you read the next line, eventually the file will end. And you are reading line by line. Every time you are reading the next line. But how do I know whether the input file has reached its end? The answer is, when you read the line, when you read each line, there's always a check you can do that the file still has next line. If there is next line, that means we have not reached the button of the file. Then we can keep on reading. And this is a while statement that we can use. You use a while input has next and keep on reading the next line until there's no next, which means the file has reached its end. Then we will not execute this block anymore. Then here we will do a close, dot close. This is a method that you use to close the file. So some application, okay, so let's go back to file demo, a file read demo. What it does, it creates scanner for keyboard input, and you will get the file name. And note this code block. Then you will create the new file and create a scanner of input file from the file object. And where does this file come from? It comes from the new file object associated with the file name. Where does this file name come from? It comes from the keyboard input of the file name. So pay attention to this code block. Just like in the file write example, we have the input of file name, and then we open the file to write to. These are the standard code block that we are going to use in order to operate on file. And the next, in your future work, as well as in your assignments, you will use this code block to open that file and set up the scanner for read, and set up the print writer to write. So next, while input file has next line, basically here it says, then string file name equal to next line. You keep on reading the next line until there's no next line. That's when you will close the file. And sometimes you will need to have a random number. This random number can be used in many different places, like games and simulations. It requires the use of randomly generated numbers. The Java API has a class called random for this purpose. To use the random class, use the following import statement, which tells Java that Java utility random class, and you can generate random numbers. So you can get the next random double, next random float, next random int. And the next random int has an option that you can tell the range of the random number. If you don't specify, this will be a huge set of random numbers, random integers. But you can specify a random number 0 to n. For example, if I want to have a random number 0 to 100, 0 to 99, I can specify int n, int 10, int 100 here. Now let's take a quick look at roll the dice. So here is an example of how you will create a random number. You basically already introduced the random class. And by the way, this is a feature of Eclipse. See this plus sign? To help you save some space, so for the code to be clearer, Eclipse by default will collapse all this import in one line, but show you this plus sign. So when you have more than one import line, by default, it will only show the first one, but have this plus sign telling you there are more. When you want to look at it, you can expand it and see every import statement in this block. Once you import the random class, you can create a random class object and use this random class object to get the next int, next int, next int. Now remember, you are getting a next int of 6, but as we just said, really what you get is 0 to 5. These are 6 numbers, 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And in order to get the real dice value, you need to plus it by 1. And always remember, it's similar to the string length. If the string length is 6, the last one will be 5. Similarly, if you ask for 6 number, because the first numbers, if you ask for a range between, for 6 values, then because the first one starting at 0, the largest you can get is 5, is the range minus 1. Okay. So let's roll the dice, 1 and 2. Let's run this again. And this time it's 1 and 1. How about 6 and 5? One more, all right?